Grok Talk.
All right, welcome back to another edition of Grok Talk. This week we have the co-founder and co-owner of GraniteGrok.com, Skip Muprhy, who's going to be joining us from two separate locations. So who knows what this is going to look like when we're done, but we're doing a program. I got my voice back. Hey, Skip, how you doing?
Not too bad, all things considered. It's been a wild time here lately.
Well, it can't possibly be as wild as the first 2 weeks of the Trump administration.
And, this has been glorious.
It isn't. I've likened it to being, every day it's like being overrun by puppies. It's just so glorious.
Well, we were just starting out when Obama took office. And, we had been in existence for a while, and the pace of blogging life was rather easy. There were 5 or 6 major things to cover, as I've written about before, but you weren't harried to try to get everything in. You could do a credible job at covering it and adding your opinion and doing all that stuff. And then Obama came in with what was then later called dense pack, where basically he threw everything against the wall. It was likening the Democrats had all of their laws lined up on the taxiway for miles, and the tower was just saying, go, 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 and you couldn't keep up. And the whole idea was to keep the other side, meaning us, disrupted, disoriented, and disheartened. And it worked until we started to figure it out. And then I learned about Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. I went, yep, this is a combination of several of these against his political opponents, of which Granite Grok was one. And, it really was something to see. And I always kept on saying since then, when are the Republicans going to do the same thing back at the Democrats? Ta-da! Here we go. And I think it's been a marvelous job. I couldn't keep up. I actually got disrupted myself and said, how do I keep typing this stuff or any of it when I know that, it's FOMO, fear of missing out. If I start in on this, I'll miss out on the next bigger thing.
Right, and compound that by the fact that back in 2018, when we were on the media platform for the Trump event in Manchester, we were officially White House press corps, and they still have our emails, and they're sending us everything.
Well, I'd like to think that it was because of Carolyn Levitt, too, who is now the press secretary, that we've been included on a lot of that stuff. In fact, I'm trying to reach out to her because I want to make my school district an example.
Well, that wouldn't be the first time for that. So go ahead, tell us what you're doing to your school district, because this is definitely not just a local thing. It's all over the state, it's all over New England, and it's all over the nation.
Yeah. Well, as we used to say in the early times, whatever goes on here in our little hamlet of Guilford, you can be sure it's going on in your hamlet as well. It may be a little bit different, but the same kinds of players, same kinds of issues, and the same kind of wrongness is happening. And, there's been a lot of times when people did not trust our school board, and now here's a prime example of it. I'll try to keep it as brief as I can, knowing that I tend to get long-winded. So there are two. It starts off with the Kearsarge problem, where a transgender girl was playing for their soccer team. Apparently, he also plays for several of the other sports for Kearsarge and does just as well. And a number of this whole thing started off with the pink wristbands with the XX on it as a protest, a silent protest, and it mushroomed from there. But for me, it started way back 2019 with Policy JBAB, transgender and nonconforming policy that the Trevor Project, the Human Rights Commission, and all those folks shoved out at the New Hampshire School Board Association, as well as similar organizations all around the country, and popped this thing into the idea of, a mere subdivision of the state has the power to grant a minor child a new right to obviate the free speech of an adult, and also took upon itself that we can mandate that our staff lie to parents about the transgender status of their children in school. And that infamous time during the school board meeting, after I had spent 2 years in court trying to get rid of both of those issues, I asked my grandson's principal, what's the transgender status of my legal son, because we adopted him, in your school? And she said, no, this is not a question and answer time. And I answered back, this is a deflection. And she said, I cannot answer you because of this policy. And that's when I called the school board members effectively totalitarians. Got their attention real quick, because how can I trust her? How can I trust the others around this table? How can I trust my grandson's teachers if you're telling them, mandating that they have to lie? So I finally got that neutered. It helps to show up. That's 90% of success, as it has been said. Well, now Trump comes along with his gazillion odd number of executive orders, effectively rolling back everything that Biden has done. And also, for the first time, we're seeing a Republican taking on the culture wars with gusto. And two in particular had to do with DEI as well as indoctrination. So between the two of them, they basically rule out DEI in schools, and the idea that boys can play on girls' teams, as well as the locker rooms and all of that stuff, if such an entity gets federal funding. And that's the key. He can tell his executive branch, don't fund these people if this is what you're finding out. Well, I really gave it to them, talking about the recent court decisions that happened in Kentucky, and I can't remember the other one, where basically the machinations of the Biden administration is to rewrite the law, Title IX, to supplant it such that there's no longer sex, it's gender identity that's important, and had put out dear colleague letters and guidance, neither of which have any force of law. And that's where this whole thing started rolling here in the state of New Hampshire, where, okay, trans is trans, and aren't we all being accommodating? Or as I was told at the school board meeting, you not only have to tolerate these people, you have to affirm them. Yeah, that's not happening. And that goes constitutionally. The right to assemble also has the right not to assemble with people that you want to. So anyways, I read them the riot act of those two laws. I read them, they had already known about the executive orders. And lo and behold, after I sat down, after saying you need to pull policy JBAB, because in the first two lines of it, you're talking about gender identity. Well, it turns out that a dear colleague letter came out from somewhere. The superintendent got it, and they've started to roll back some of the policies back to 2020 instead of the newly appointed one, 2024. Apparently, they kind of expected that Biden's protege Kamala was going to get elected, and they'd have a free runway to continue embedding DEI and not biology into the school system. Surprise! But they did nothing about policy JBAB. So guess what I get to go after? Now there's another thing. Just like what we're seeing in the federal government, where they don't like it that their emails are being e-blasted out with the resign by Thursday for 8 months worth of buyout, something that is normal here in the private sector. How dare we lose our jobs in the government sector? Even though 8 months is far more than what any of us ever got. And, no more pronouns. DEI is being rooted out by Hegseth and Rubio And now Pam Biondi just got in as Attorney General. So we'll see that going out of the Justice Department. It's a good case that Kash Patel is going to become FBI. I just think that's very, very ironic and delicious. They spied on him. They went after him tooth and nail, and now he's going to be their boss. You just have to smile at that.
Oh, it's great. And I think Cash is guaranteed. I think RFK Jr. is going to get in. I know Tulsi was the only one that was close, but it seems like maybe she's going to make it. So, the Democrats have kind of almost given up trying to make the case that, I mean, they're going to keep making it. They're going to embarrass themselves on C-SPAN and national television because that's what they're good at. Maggie Hassan at the edge of tears over autism when she's talking to RFKJ. And of course, Steve Kirsch the next day sends out an open letter and says, hey, Maggie, if this is so important to you, I've got 14 experts on both sides of this issue. Would you like to sit down with them and let's see how serious you are about this autism thing? And of course, I wrote about it. I think it's published in the Today. And she's probably not going to take him up on it because she doesn't really care about that. She cares about the soundbite and trying to paint the nominee as some kind of lunatic, which is kind of what the Democrats have been doing. And so this has been across the board. They haven't had anything to grab onto. They've been trying to find a focus or a center or something to freeze and isolate Perlinsky, as you mentioned. And they've been trying to use these nominees, but it's not working out. So now they've settled on deciding that USAID, which is an agency that was created by executive order 60 years ago, being shut down and shuffled and shrunk, is like the worst thing that could have ever happened to America. Oh, it's dictatorial. It's fascist. No, it's really not. It's just a giant agency that launders money for CIA black ops, pretending it's to teach Peruvians about transgender opera or something. It's just nuts.
Yeah, and 97% of them, when they do a political donation, give it to the Democrats. No big surprise there. And the original EO for that was done by JFK. I sometimes traverse Gizmo because of techie type stuff and, gizmos, but it's been getting political lately. And you cannot believe some of these leftists that leave comments. They think it's unconstitutional. They think it's illegal, that it's been shut down, that how dare that Musk has the power to do it. I just simply pointed out to some of them that this was the EO. Well, basically what you said, gave the history and put in the proviso that, live by the EO, die by the EO. And that what one president does can be undone by another one. And it got folded into Department of State, where now Rubio is going to be the acting director. And you can be sure that it's going to go back to America First interests versus any kind of DEI pet project going on. And, now we have a new term, unelected billionaire.
Yeah.
That's what they're calling Elon Musk. And none of them seem to understand Elon can do nothing except get his crew of, underage, hyper capable teenagers, set them loose on their systems, just like he did on what was then called Twitter to root everything out. And the glorious things that they're already coming out with. And, they are so upset that how can these little twits get all that information so fast? Well, because the private sector, especially coming out of SpaceX and Tesla, are hyper capable, and they put the government workers to shame on learning these monolithic, dinosauric type systems, and can ferret anything out within minutes. It's again what I said earlier, glorious.
Don't you like how, like on day one, he says every DEI office has been closed, don't show up. They're still getting paid. They can't do more damage. He did the exact same thing at USAID. He said, don't show up. There's nothing for you to do here. Stay home. And I'm like, oh my God, why didn't anybody do this before?
Well, there's another I've been collecting a lot of stories, but there's one that I have to refine that said nobody in DC understands what's coming at them in the next few days because they're so hidebound in government. They're so locked into that one political worldview. This is how things work. They have no idea how things work in a hyper successful environment where it is tooth and nail, dog eat dog, cat eat dog, and you have to outmaneuver everybody else. I mean, this is like we all know about the one-eyed man is king in the kingdom of the blind. Well, all of these youngsters have two eyes, and their leader has a big club and is using it. And they have no idea because one of Alinsky's rules is go and approach your enemies from a point of view they don't understand. They do not really understand Trump. They don't understand Elon Musk. You have to hand it. Trump learned from his losing. He spent the 4 years learning more about the government that he once headed, figured out who his real allies were, figured out which allies were really smart enough, and had the brass to go in and do this kind of thing and slowly return government back to what it's supposed to do, into the confines of the U.S. Constitution. It's going to be a wild ride, and I'm so glad that he's doing it. Now I try to do that to my school board.
Yeah, I think they need some of that. The other thing that I thought was interesting is that, much like the Democrats, the media has been dense packed into what do we do, what do we focus on, how do we, so Trump comes out and says, I'm going to do these tariffs. He says, we're going to get the canal back in Panama. He says all these things and they all lose their minds. And it's almost like he's Breitbarting them. He sort of, he
Yes.
hands them a little treat and they go crazy. And the next day he's proven right. Mexico, within 24 hours, was like, okay, we will do more to secure the border. Even Canada is like, okay, we will do more to secure the border. Rubio went to Panama. Panama has announced it is canceling its Belt and Road Agreement with China, and they're going to let U.S. warships travel through the canal for free. Again, now I haven't read anything on Greenland yet, but I bet you there's a deal. He's making a deal, and I think that's part of the thing. People don't understand. I know that politicians consider themselves to be wheelers and dealers and deal makers and compromisers. Donald Trump, his entire life has been about making deals. Now, I had a boss who loved the deal. He didn't even really care how it ended. It was the actual process of the deal itself, of making the deal, of starting at one point and ending up somewhere else. He loves it. He just loves it. Trump's just like that. I didn't read his book, but I know he's like that. So everything he says is, this is my starting point. This is what I expect. And then he ends up getting what he wants. And everybody else is like, how do you do that?
Yeah. Well, it is funny because they just announced it was either Denmark or Greenland has said, yes, we're opening up the door for you to bring more U.S. military assets onto Greenland because we already have a pretty good sized base. So I think by saying, well, we'll take you and buy you, which is not a bad thing. We have bought a lot of what is now the United States with lots of cash. But effectively, we're trying to neuter China and Russia in the Arctic Circle. And that was
Right.
probably the whole idea. It's like prestidigitation. Here, I'm going to talk about this, and I want this over here, just like you said. And he's getting this. Whoever thought that El Salvador, when we repatriate some of the criminal illegal aliens, when they'd say, oh, well, you can send the American criminals to us as well.
I know. You know what? I just listened to an interview with Megyn Kelly and Rick Grinnell, and Rick Grinnell went down to Venezuela, and it was a secret thing, and he went down there, and nobody knew why he was going, but apparently Venezuela had like a dozen American hostages down there. So he ends up getting half of them back, right? They're already back in the United States. he gets Venezuela, this is Venezuela, Maduro, to agree to take hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans back, and not just take them back. Venezuela is going to pay to take them back and send the planes to America to pick them up.
Yeah. Well,
Holy crap. Look, what is Trump doing?
yeah, same thing with Colombia, where they were going to fight the tariff. And Trump knew
Oh, yeah.
very well. He's coming from the U.S. has the position of strength of being the number one marketplace in the world. And, when these other smaller countries decide, well, we'll retaliate with tariffs, they don't seem to understand that our marketplace is so large. Like Schumer standing up and saying, look, here's a Molson. Your beer's going to be more expensive. The avocado that makes your guac is going to be more expensive. We have choices. And if I can't have this, there's 50 other things that I could choose instead. So what? These, again, they cannot think at the speed of the internet like Trump does, or the art of the deal. And I love it that when Colombia first started to push back, huff, puff, and throw out the chest. And then the president, whose last name I cannot pronounce correctly, said, okay, I'll send my presidential plane up to get them at my expense, just like Venezuela. They just don't, the American media and the Democrats don't understand how to do it. And I'm going to add, the establishment GOP doesn't understand what is going on. They've all had their kneecaps punched in mafia style, and the ground and their rugs pulled out from underneath them. They are at a loss. If you thought Obama had it down pat, he's a piker compared to what Trump is doing right now.
It's very impressive. So news also broke this week that 20,000 government employees have taken Trump up on his offer. And nobody really knows. I guess the deadline is today or
Thursday.
Tomorrow. Thursday. Tomorrow. Okay. And they don't know how many more people will take him up on it. But you have to think that the USAID thing was a strategic strike to send a message to all those people who were on the fence about taking the offer. 8 months of pay, you're done. And I don't know. Nobody seems to know how many people will actually take him up on it. I'm kind of wondering if they might not just extend it if they get a good response. But 20,000 is a pretty good start. And if they could get to 50 or 100,000, that'd be a thing.
Well, they said the initial estimate that was being floated out to the media was between 100 and 200,000 people, which is a goodly chunk of the 2.3 million people who work for the feds. But I'll add this. There's a lot of people who I do believe are sitting on the edge. Even if they got, say, 75,000, I think you're right. They're going to make another round of it, but it won't be 8 months worth of pay and benefits. It will be lower, which by they'll be sending another message like, okay, this sale is almost over. This is not like Mike Lindell selling my pillows all the time. It's just going to be, all right, here's the Trump train. Catch the caboose if you can. I'm going slow right now, but I'm about to, shove that throttle forward. And what's really nice is that the message was to those that decide not to take the buyout, oh, we're not guaranteeing that we're going to keep your positions anyways. Whoever has done all of these executive orders, and even Jonathan Turley noted, the noted constitutional lawyer, this time they've got real pros creating all of these things, all of the EOs. They're wargaming out every single line and phrase and seeing how it can interlock into everything else. These guys that are just on the sidelines, the employees of the government, have no idea what's coming next. It's terrifying to them. I bet they'll easily get 75,000. That's my guess. Uneducated, wishful thinking, but 75,000.
That's a lot of people who are going to have to learn how to code. So
well, no more, because now with AI generating pretty good code,
they're going to have to become plumbers and electricians and construction. They could pick blueberries and avocados and lettuce, because I understand there's supposed to be a lot of openings there.
Yeah, except for when the Tesla bots come up to speed of manufacture. And there's several companies that are doing that. But, uh, it marches on.
Rock Talk.
All right, we're back with Skip Murphy, who is now in his car in a parking lot somewhere, I think in Guilford, New Hampshire, but that doesn't really matter because we're here to talk to Skip, not about where Skip is. And if you tuned in for the first half, welcome back. And Skip, you look comfortable in your fabulous grok hat, and thanks for coming back.
Yeah, and my office is at 12 degrees.
12 degrees. Yeah, it's a little frosty up here this last 2 months. But anyway, so we talked about a lot of national stuff in the first segment, a little bit on Guilford and the school board. And now we're going to move on to New Hampshire, but you had something you wanted to read first.
Yeah, let's see if, since I'm on my phone, let's see if I can swap without losing you. So stand by, folks.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, that worked.
here it is. From a tweet from Just Loci. With Doge, people are going to discover how fast 5 or 6 cracked Zoomer developers using the latest gen AI can operate on large heterogeneous data sets. Security through obscurity as a principle of governance will be over. And what that basically says, get these hyper great 19 to 20 something folks, give them a mission and get the AI stuff, shove it onto USAID's data sets, their databases, and look what they can come up with just a couple of days. And, I remember that clip of Caroline Levitt standing there reeling off some of the projects, the DEI transgender stuff that USAID sponsored all over the world. And I bet you they're thinking, how the heck did they come up with this stuff so fast? Ta-da!
Yeah, there's searchable databases that came out over the weekend for everything that USAID does, all the money. I've been looking at various groups and people are searching through things and all the money that's being spent in New Hampshire on things like DEI or on vaccination of children or any issue you can think of that is important to somebody USAID is funneling money to your state, to NGOs and UNH and Dartmouth and all these other places to promote and advance. So there is gobs of money. I mean, we're talking millions and millions of dollars just in a tiny state like New Hampshire. So imagine how much they're spending in your state. I bet it's quite a bit.
Yeah, and it's been likened to USAID was the funding mechanism for all of the left-leaning NGOs. You think any right side ones are getting it? Just gobs of money. And of course, they're returning it to the Democrat Party coffers.
Right.
So it was using our tax dollars to fund the Democrat Party. Of course, as you may have been watching, they still haven't figured out what hit them come election day. And the funniest clip I've seen was the just past chair of the National DNC complaining that, okay, here's the rules for our committee, and we need a couple of non-binary folks because we have to have sex, evenly distributed across all of our members. It's like, I want them to keep doing this. Mm-hmm. I want them to keep thinking that way. I want them to keep electing more David Hoggs as vice president of the DNC. And for those who don't know or unfamiliar with that name, he was a student at Parkland High School in Florida when that shooter ran through. He wasn't there at the time, from what my understanding is.
He was not.
But he took it. He definitely did the Democrat never let a crisis go to waste and has been riding that wave not for 15 minutes, but what seems to be 15 years. Harvard bought into it and all the other things. Unfortunately, his pillow deal of trying to compete against Mike Lundell didn't take off. It was just a bunch of feathers in the air.
Yeah, he's had a few issues with, this is his thing. He became famous for being famous. No, he was not at Parkland that day. Other students have come out and said he wasn't anywhere near the campus. And yet you know, all he's been doing since then is trying to capitalize on the idea that maybe he was.
Yeah, absolutely. The nuance.
Right.
The slick marketing.
Just like AOC and the bomb threat thing, or no, the insurrection thing. She wasn't even in the frickin' house.
Slick marketing. Just like I told, I used to do a lot on Tree Hugger, as you know. I still love that logo that you came up for it, for Tree Hugger. Now I've been reading and writing over it, carbon up front. I'm going to ask you if you can do something with that logo as well, because the main progenitor for Treehouse or Tree Hugger is Lloyd Alter, and I'm still having fun with him. And he just wrote something. Well, now we have to compete with a country that runs its economy on beams of light and has advanced AI. He's talking about China, and of course, I crashed his parade by using Perplexity.ai to give him the lowdown on how much coal is being used, and then another site that's talking about how many coal plants they've got. They've got almost 1,200 coal plants. Yet everybody in the West that's of like mind of the renewables, the Green New Deal, thinks that the entire economy in China runs with photovoltaics and windmills. And it's like, no, guys, it's just slick marketing. David Hogg, I guess, took a page out of the book, maybe just a paragraph.
Well, yeah, China is running on dirty coal and oil and gas. And yeah, they have some of that other so-called renewable stuff, but that's not what's powering their economy or making their manufacturing base expand or building up their military. So they're going to be in for a surprise. We've talked about, states like Vermont, which has some really, really regressive and oppressive green standards, and all to remit a small, tiny quantity of emissions, which China erases in a heartbeat, which means it's completely useless. So, every time they bring this up, they want to build wind in the Gulf of Maine. They want, solar panel farms in the rural parts of New Hampshire. And I'm like, you're in the wrong place. If emissions is the issue, you got to go to Africa, India, and China, because they are out emitting us each individually. And if that's the problem, if it's global and it's emissions, then you need to go there. And they don't even want to talk about that. It's just too funny.
Yeah, I'm glad that we have Mr. Roper writing for Granite Rock from Vermont. I read his latest missive, and the chair of the Democrats over in Vermont had this thing about their emission-free energy process, and he pointed out the hypocrisy of, the first thing she said was all about emissions. Then she mentioned affordable energy for the citizens of Vermont, showing her crass convictions about her elected representative to do the best by her citizens instead of the weak approach for the world.
Well, she might be able to get cheap power from China. I mean, they are burning a lot of coal over there. So, if they want affordable, and they're not paying any attention. They're offshoring all their emissions anyway. So, to China and India and, Southeast Asia. So what the heck, right? So let's talk about some New Hampshire stuff. Good election for the Granite State, at least on paper. Governor was Republican. The Executive Council is a majority Republican. The New Hampshire House is majority Republican. And the New Hampshire Senate is supermajority Republican. They have an opportunity to do a lot of things. But because we're Republicans, we like to argue and fight over what those things are. And so that's just how it works. And everybody's pretending like this is new or like it's going to totally destroy the party. And I'm like, well, no. I mean, it might. It depends on how everybody responds, right? But that's the point. We're here to debate. Granite Rock exists for this very reason, to give people the opportunity to beat each other up rhetorically in pursuit of a agreeable compromise and or the truth.
And we're still a thorn in the side of the establishment GOP. One of our unofficial mottos is we annoy people. And, we'll continue to do that. It's nice to be nice when they are nice and doing the right things. We'll congratulate them for that, but we will chide them or scream at them when they're doing the wrong thing.
All right. So what do you think so far? We're a month excuse me, we're a month into this new legislature, new session. They've got 2 years. What stands out to you as good or bad?
Okay. The good, I think, is that they're trying to push parental rights once again. With the new House majority, I think that they've majoritied out the rhinos like boards, bike boards here in the Belknap County, who consistently votes against it. They did primary out some of the others that would vote against it, so that may become a reality at this point. I think that'll be a good thing. The bad thing is one of the stories on Granite Rock. In fact, the most esteemed wife pointed it out to me last night about changing some of the DCYF rules and making them vague, which is trying to bring in, it's sort of like the abortion deal. A lot of the laws on abortion say, here's the limit on abortions, except for the exception of the physical well-being of the mother or just the well-being of the mother, which can be defined as anything that a doctor so desires to allow the result to be a dead baby. However, in this rewrite of some of the DCYF rules, without going into a lot of the details, TMEW pointed out that if you yell at your child, finish your peas or you're going to your room for the night, could be construed as being psychological malfeasance, and DCYF could come and take your child. Now, it sounds like a trite argument. It's not entirely clear that DCYF will work like that. Oh, wait a minute, they did. With my granddaughter, and a nick on the neck put there by my son and grabbing her, restraining her, because she was literally hitting her younger siblings. And I've written about that on Granite Rock for quite some time. DCYF can do bad things in a bad way. And I just look at this new HB, I think it's either 553 or 533, that presents the same thing, only wider. And I look at some of the Republicans that have signed on to this, and I go, what the heck are you thinking? This is bad, bad, bad. And I can say this because TMEW and I have gone from what's called kinship caregivers to general foster parents to skilled care foster parents to emergency foster parents to crisis level foster parents. And now we're looking at going to the next two new steps that they're bringing in, so that, if you're going to do something, do the best that you can. Foster parents will be held to the same status or even harder. But when the rules and the laws are vague, nothing good is going to come out of it, because we both know, and our readers know, that if given a spot to do harm, bad people will take advantage of that. And I think we're going to see a pendulum go the absolute wrong way with it.
It seems like, for people who are interested in a deeper dive on this, the last two episodes of Granite State Live, 2 weeks ago, they covered this in great detail. And this week, which was last night's show, they touched on it again. The YDC case and the sexual assaults and all of that nonsense and all the stuff that can happen when kids can't get into a foster home, or they can't get adopted, or they've been taken from parents for no good reason and they end up being abused or just lost in the system. Some run away. It's pretty ugly. So you can see those on the Grok Rumble channel, on the Grok YouTube channel, and at graniterock.com in the Right Rally, which is our podcasting page. You should check them out. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And you're absolutely right, Skip. This is a mess. They should be getting rid of family court, which has only been around for 20 years anyway. And they should be cleaning up DCYF. But it seems like there's an institutional and systemic objection to doing anything about it, despite the fact that New Hampshire has made national news for court cases and settlements for the YDC sexual abuse cases, all of which is tied to DCYF and DHHS. So we have this thing where people on both sides of the aisle have been protecting this nonsense and complaining about how much it's going to cost, but not doing anything about it. And there's a distinct shortage of people like yourselves who are willing to help take some of these kids in to keep them out of the system, at least that part of the system. So it is a little alarming to me. The new legislature has come up with some pretty decent stuff, good LSRs that have become decent bills, but I don't know what the deal is with family court and DCYF, and you're clearly as baffled as I am.
Yeah, and the problem that they're facing, in fact, we just had a visit from DCYF. They have a position called caregiver coordinators. Those are our liaisons into DCYF. They're constantly asking, what can we do for you? Are there any barriers? And I can ask questions of them. And we've been blessed to have two really good DCYF employees. And, don't get me wrong. Not everybody is rotten in Denmark in DCYF, because that's the wrong opinion. It's always that small percentage, like Mike Boards in the New Hampshire House. They can be very secretive. For instance, Biden had that EO that said all DCYF foster parents had to be transgender affirmative. Several times I put in right to knows, and I never got a reasonable response back. They just didn't want to talk about it. I have a feeling that even though they're pushing this bill, and I'm glad that other people are talking about it, yay-hoo, and I'm glad that they're willing to let us host their podcast. I haven't listened to it, to be honest. Now I'm going to go back and listen to them. But they don't have enough people, and they don't have enough foster homes. Since COVID, they've lost almost 2/3 of the foster homes that they had in the state. I asked the question because, frankly, they look at me. We don't have anybody like you as a foster parent, Skip. Gee, I wonder why. Because I'm always quoting the law. I'm always asking hard questions. And they just, it's sort of like Trump and Elon coming at the bureaucracy of the federal government in ways they never thought of. They don't know what to do with me. So I thank Granite Rock's experience for that.
Well, I don't think it's just them that don't know what to do with you, but, that's kind of a hallmark of our very existence. It does tend to affect our ability to have access in some cases. It does affect our ability to get funding from certain wealthy Republicans who might otherwise donate to graniterock.com. But, we've said since day one, and I've been here since 2008, even though the site started in 2010, sorry. It's principle before politics. And it doesn't matter to us what side of the aisle you're on, whether you're on a side, whether you're on a fence. You are welcome to express your opinion, and other people are welcome to disassemble it at their leisure. And it's not personal. It's a physical relationship. It's political, and we agree to disagree. And that's how it works. So, again, if you have an op-ed or an opinion you want to send us about anything, especially anything we've talked about today, by all means, please email it to me at steve@graniterock.com, and we'll share it. But be prepared, because our commenters might be mean to you, and that's just the price you pay for expressing your opinion in the public domain. And we don't regulate them. We let them say what they have to say, as long as they aren't implied or direct threats against another individual or group. So be prepared. But this is the real deal. This is not exactly Marcus or Queensberry rules, but the gloves are off, and you have to be an adult. And let me just tell you that if you're going to engage in any of this, like Skip's been doing for years with his school board and with DCYF, it's the worst thing that's going to happen is your skin's going to get thicker.
Yeah, that's true. And, I've been given good praise by an employee at the school district who told me that I may not always agree with you, Skip, but you always have a point to make, and you can back up that point, and you are vociferous in making that point, and you show up and you are persistent about making that. And, at this point, whoever's the chair at the public comment sessions, they just look at me right at the beginning of every public comment session and go, You coming up to the podium? Well, yes, I am.
That's why I'm
And you
here.
got it. Not enough people show up for all these kinds of meetings. Not enough people. We were meant as a society, as a republic, to have an informed and active population for self-government, and for self-government to work, ourselves have to show up to work. And too many people have lost that. So that's why Granite Rock exists, to throw in another thing. Because I remember an establishment, GOP, when we first started, created that website called Red Hampshire to combat us, to be, the more moderate version. And it was being supplied with quite a bit of money. But when the money ran out, unlike us, Red Hampshire disappeared in the twinkle of an eye. We've outlasted everybody, including Blue Hampshire, the Democrat.
We do still need money, though, ladies and gentlemen. Please.
Yes.
Anyway, so let's talk about Kelly Ayotte. She's our governor. Definitely a better choice than the alternative, which was Joyce Craig. But again, Ayotte is had a good start as a U.S. Senator and then went downhill pretty quickly once she got in with John McCain and Lindsey Graham. We've all kind of decided to give her the benefit of the doubt and see how things go. She's had the job for about a month, and she said some pretty good things so far. But everybody's wondering, when are we going to see the old Ayotte, if we're going to see her at all? What do you think?
Well, first off, I'm hoping that because she's not a U.S. Senator down in Washington, even though I haven't been going, when some of the GOP events are present, that she'll actually not just send a letter to be read by somebody else, which was always the funny, not so funny, who gets the honor to read the letter this time kind of deal. I have been listening to what she's been heard to say on WMUR talk shows and in the print media. So far, so good. You're correct. She wants parental rights to be one of her lead issues. That's a good thing. She's pushing on the border. That's a good thing. Pushing on illegal immigration. That's a good thing. She's not anti-Trump, at least publicly. She seems to be somewhat aligned there, which I think shows that, well, she listens to the polls and watched the election results and went, oh, I guess I have to whatever. We'll see what happens. Nothing big has happened at this point by which what you were talking about, we can make a decision of good Kelly or bad Kelly. All depends on how things are going to go. I mean, you can't expect everybody who's in the executive chair to be a Trump and acting at the speed of the internet. She's not one of those kinds, so I'm willing to cut her slack. We'll see what happens. But I'm quite sure that we will be very happy to let her know when she's strayed off the path.
Oh, yeah.
I am happy, however, that she's creating the state version of Doge.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see how that runs out. We could use that as a linchpin to say, is she serious or was it for show?
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. I looked at the list of people that are on that committee, and the only one I really trust is Kimberly Abear, but I am glad she's there. The rest of them are all the usual suspects, so we'll see how that goes. But she did bring it up. I understand she got rid of the DEI committee or whatever, the governor's commission on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is one of several I have wanted to be rid of for a while. So that's a good step. And so we'll see how it goes. So we had about 5 minutes left. The next big question, and this is the question we always ask, if we win big in the state level, at the state level in a presidential year, is the midterm. So midterms don't have top ticket power. There is a Senate race this year in 26, and it has Jeanne Shaheen on it, and she has not announced whether she's going to run again or not. And that will have a lot of impact on what happens down ticket and who we end up running. And I know the GOP looks like they want Scott Brown.
Oh, dang.
What do you think? We've only had a month. We've got 2 years. The first month's been a little rocky, but the midterms are coming. Any thoughts on whether or not, a lot of people are saying the Democrats are going to wipe us out at the state level, that all they're doing is getting money and collecting data and working really hard, and that their focus isn't to try to so much stop what's happening in these 2 years, it's to take it all back in 2026.
Well, that's always the intent, but Ray Buckley doesn't have the chair of the New Hampshire Democrats doesn't have a great track record lately. It all depends on what the DNC does, and they are in just absolute disarray. I get several of the far left progressives, email distributions. They think my name is Steve. Perfect timing. Go ahead, spit out that coffee.
Yeah, I know.
And they said, our hard work won. We got this guy from Minnesota to be the chair, and he's a far, 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 far left Marxist. So, and they're all still about DEI. They got David Hogg in as the vice chair, as we talked about earlier. And it's like, I just love this. But one of the things that we need to watch, which may determine this, is what is Trump's favorability. Right now, the GOP in general has some of the highest favorability that they've seen historically. If he continues to do what he has promised, remember, he won the popular vote by 4 million people, blowout in the Electoral College. He made a lot of promises. If he keeps his promises and people like the results, I think that the Democrats here in New Hampshire will still continue to be the minority, because that will spill down even if we don't have a top-level type race.
So, we'll circle back to Trump, since that's where we started. We talked about at the beginning of the show the whirlwind of activity in the first 2 weeks. Can he sustain that?
Yes, because the way and the speed that he's been working at right now, he did the first term as well. And now what's made it easier is that he's got a lot of help. He's got people, I don't want to use the word loyal to him, because so much bad stuff was put out about that, but I believe that they believe in the mission, and they're not operating as fast as he is, but certainly faster. Look at Hegseth getting rid of DEI, rechanging the standards already in the Department of Defense. Treasury's already started. Pam Bondi was confirmed as the Attorney General, so you're going to see DOJ going around. Wait till Kash Patel gets confirmed as well. And Rubio, as head of the Department of State, is already making lots of changes. They are taking the leadership of Trump, which they should do. They're his people. He put them in those spots, and they are making sure that they're going after the people who are trying to do the rebellion. And I think that this time he has planned well. They know what to do. They're not going to be, we want you to like us. They're going to be ruthless. And they know this is a one-shot deal to try to cut down the federal government down to size the way that the founders wanted it. I would love it to have only if Trump can put tariffs in and income taxes out, we may actually shrink it down to where it's only 5 to 10% of our GNP. In our founding, we were at 0.05%. Let it concentrate on what the Constitution says it can do, and the 10th Amendment says, and all other powers are reserved for the states to do, like education, for instance, and a lot of other stuff that the federal government shouldn't be doing. That'll be a win. And I'm hoping that he can do that. It's something that, since I've become politically aware back in 2004, I've always said, what the heck happened? How do we get here? And finally we have somebody, he may not succeed, but man, you got to give him kudos for trying hard.
Last question. He has said he wants to dismantle the Department of Education. He is going to need help from Congress to do it. But here's the thing. Does he do to the Department of Ed what he did to USAID? Does he lock the building, kick everybody out, go in and clean it up, or does he have to take another path?
He will have to do another path. Both USAID and Department of Ed were created by executive orders. Jimmy Carter did one, and JFK did the other. So we'll see what happens. There's a lot of laws that have been written concerning the Department of Ed, so I don't think a shutdown, lockdown can work. But what he can do is readjust and throw overboard a lot of the deck chairs from the Department of Ed Titanic and say, we're just going to block grant the rest of that stuff. And if he can get to that point, it would be a rather easier path to follow to finally just say, why should we block grant it? Why don't we just let them keep it? So I see that as a path. So it's highly possible, given how he's been running roughshod. It's sort of like Braveheart, rushing through the enemies.
Skip Muprhy, thank you very much for taking time from two different locations to do an interview today. Last minute, I didn't have a guest. This will publish tonight. You have a great day, and I know we will talk again soon.
Oh gosh, I hope so. It was, we who started Grok Talk. It's nice to be asked back on.
You have a good day, sir.
Okay.